All right, good evening. The Daf Yomi for the week is sponsored by Rabbi Aaron and Evelyn Kislasi B'Zchus, a refuah shlema for Rabbi Aaron's mother-in-law, Hadrabat Esther. And also, today's Daf is sponsored for the first Your site by the Kahal Yereim Kehila in memory of Ori Danino, Carmel Gat, Hirsch Goldberg Polin, Alex Lubnov, and Almag Sarusi and Eden Yerushalmi. The first Your site is today, the 24th of Av. The hostages that were killed when during a rescue attempt last year, may their neshamos have an aliyah.
Amen.
And we are at Ba'amine Rav Asi Mirab Yochanan, which is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 lines down from the top of the page, 58B, 58B2 in your art scroll. Ba'amine Rav Asi Mirab Yochanan. Rav Asi asked Rabbi Yochanan for the question. Yayin shemaschu ovi kochav mahu. What happens if a idol worshiper he mixes water, right, into the wine? In their days, the wine was thicker. Now, I've asked Rabbi Gislason to try to figure out exactly what's going on, why their wine needed dilution.
Or whatever
No idea. I'm not quite sure whether they potentially made their wine into some kind of concentrate and then they had to re-dilute it. I don't know what it is because it shouldn't necessarily. But anyway, their wine needed diluting. And so let's say they dilute it. Now, the question that strikes the Rabbi Yochanan is that Rav Asi asks the question, maschu. He says maschu, uses a strange word for diluting. Maschu. So that's the first thing Rabbi Yochanan wants to know. Vema mazgu. Why do you use the word maschu to mean diluting? Mazgu means to dilute. It means to pour a cup of wine and to pour the water and then to dilute it. So Amar Le, so he answered him, you know why I use the word maschu? I like looking at psukim, the verses that are in the Torah, and I use the language that the psukim use. Because the pasuk says, Tavcha tavcha mascha yena, talking about a wise woman. She acquires meat and she mixes wine and she sets her table. And so the word in Mishlei for pouring out wine is mascha. So I like that word because it comes from psukim. So Amar Le, so Rabbi Yochanan says, no, rule of thumb is lashon Torah latzmo, lashon chachamim latzmo. Two different things. The words that psukim use is one thing. The words that chachamim use is a different thing. When we're talking in Torah, we're going to use the language that we're using, the Aramaic words, the way that use the word mazgu. So now, the question that he's asking is, we started yesterday with many of these circumstances in which a non-Jew is touching the wine, and we had ruled that we were going to prohibit wine that first we know that if a non-Jew consecrates it for idolatry, that's for sure prohibited, and you can't get any benefit out of it. But we had this sort of a middle kind of a ground where we said, don't drink it, but you can sell it. So what's that all about? So that's a circumstance where the non-Jew has not consecrated it for idolatry. We have reason to believe that they haven't. Nevertheless, we're going to make it prohibited in any event. And there are a couple of reasons why we might do that. Number one is because we want to avoid circumstances where people who were not otherwise Torah knowledgeable might make a mistake and think it's permitted. If you permitted it halfway, we just say prohibited and don't drink it. Another circumstance is that we have a secondary problem. Not only don't we want non-Jews to consecrate their wine, but we really want to prevent Jews and non-Jews from socializing a lot and going to a bar together. So therefore, we created a circumstance wherever the non-Jew touches and gets involved with the wine, we made it prohibited to drink. But we didn't make that prohibited to use. So now this is where this question comes in. Pouring the wine out, even though the non-Jew hasn't touched the wine, surely he's preparing the wine for a Jew to drink. That's a social action.
Don't some people hold that even if a non-Jew actually looks at it, it's not kosher?
No, looking at it is not going to be an issue. Looking at it doesn't count. So Amar Le, so he says osir. He says that is prohibited, right? I'm not going to be able to do Mishum. Why? Because of lech amrina nazira schor lekarma. We tell a nazir, go get away from the graveyard, right, or from the vineyard. Walk around the vineyard. We don't want a nazir has a prohibition. He's taken upon himself extra restrictions because he wants to be close to God, and he's worried that if he drinks wine, so then he may do the wrong things. So he swears off anything to do with grapes. We tell him, don't even go through a vineyard, right? You don't want to be tempted. Go around. So that's the idea here. Really, there's absolutely nothing wrong. The non-Jew hasn't even touched the wine. Nevertheless, stay away. We're going to avoid, and that's why we're doing it. Lo tikrav, don't come close. So Rabbi Yirmiyah ikla l'savta. So Rabbi Yirmiyah, so he went to Sibta. right? He went to a place, Sipta, not Safta. He went to a place called Sipta.
No, Safta.
He says Safta?
Yeah.
Okay, so he says, in my little on the notes that says Sipta.
Oh.
Okay, Safta, Sifta. You say tomato, I say tomato, Sifta, Safta. Chaza chamra demazgi oved ove kochavim ve'ishti Yisrael minei. So he saw there was some wine, and he saw the non-Jews were pouring it out, pouring the water into it and diluting it, and the Jews were drinking from it. Va'asar lahu, and he told them, don't do that anymore. Mishum lech lech amrin nazira schor schor lekamra lutikrov. From the same idea, tell the nazir, go around, don't go anywhere near the vineyard. Itmar nami, we have another Amoraic statement that follows in the same way, that Amar Rabbi Yochanan, that Rabbi Yochanan said, V'amri la Amar Ravasi and Rabbi Yochanan. Some said it was Ravasi who said it, and then Rabbi Yochanan. Yayin shemaz go over kolchavim, aser. This is again, Ravasi originally started this discussion by asking Rabbi Yochanan. Now Ravasi is saying in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, because he told me, right, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that wine that is diluted out by a non-Jew, by an idolater, is aser mishum lech lech amri nazira, that we say to stay away from these sort of circumstances. We tell the Nazir, go around the vineyard, schor schor lekarma lo sikrav, don't come close. So therefore we say, better be safe than sorry. Don't drink that wine.
I like being sorry. It's more sorry than safe for me.
So that's another. Okay, that's you. So Reish Lakish ikla lebatzra. So Reish Lakish went to a place called Batzra. Batzra was in Babylonia, and he was. Well, we're going to see what happened to him. He got a little mixed up. Chaza Yisrael dekachli peri delo maasri. He saw that the Jews were eating fruit that grew in that location, and they were not taking off the tithes. Produce that grows in Israel has to have certain tithes taken off. A 10% has to go to the Levium, another portion goes to Kohanim, and you're not allowed to eat it until that's already taken off. V'aser lehu, and he said, you guys, you can't be doing that. You can't eat this without taking tithes off. Now, this was a city in Babylonia. However, what happened is that he was mistaken, right? He thought there's a place in the Torah called Betzer. And Betzer is in the location where Syria, modern Syria, stayed, where Ruvain had their land during the times of the First Temple era, which is in where Syria is. And Babylonia apparently extended towards that area. He thought this city of Batzra was the city of Betzer, and as a result felt that it was part of Israel, and therefore they should not be eating the produce that grows in that location without taking off Trumas and Maasros. Okay, so now, Chazam Maya desagdi lehu ovdi kochavim v'shasu Yisrael. Then the next thing he saw that they had water, that non-Jews were bowing down to it, right? And he said, you can't drink that water, becomes prohibited. It's idolatry.
Because the waters of Avodah Zara.
Because the waters of Avodah Zara. So okay, so now and the Jews were drinking it. So he says you can't do that, right? Can't get any benefit from that. Then also lekamid Rabbi Yochanan. So now Reish Lakish goes back to Rabbi Yochanan. At this point, Rabbi Yochanan was his Rebbe. So he comes back to Rabbi Yochanan. They were in Eretz Yisrael. So Reish Lakish took a trip to Babylonia. Amar le adikamatorech alach. Before you get a chance to take your coat off, zil hadar batzar. He says, zil hadar, go back and tell everybody you made a mistake. Those are not proper rulings, because Batzar lav hainu Batzra. First thing is, Betzer is not Batzra, two different cities. So therefore, that city really is Babylonian. There's no need to take Trumas and Maasros tithes off of the produce grown outside of Israel. That's number one. Umayim shel rabim ein ne'asarin. Second of all, these waters, they're public. And remember, we discussed public water cannot be declared an idol. So therefore, it's not an issue. And Rabbi Yochanan Latame. Rabbi Yochanan is going according to his own reason, where he explains this to Reish Lakish. Damar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yehotzadok. We get into Nun Tesamalav 59a1, because Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yehotzadok, Mayim shel Rabim, if you have public water, ein ne'asarin, you cannot make it idolatrous. Now, Hadiyachid ne'asarin, which seems to imply that Rabbi Yochanan would hold that if the water did belong to a particular individual, then it could be idolatrous. The person could say, this water in this well, this is my water, and I declare it for idolatry. That's what it would sound like. Now, why does he have to say that the problem with making this Avodah Zara was that it was public? What about the fact that it's attached to the ground? And we said that mountains can't become Avodah Zara, and we said that all those... it's water attached to the ground also can't become avodah zara. What about that answer? So lo tzricha de talshinhu gala. What happened is the waves would come and the water would go spraying up in the air, and they would worship it when it was detached from the ground. So therefore, at the moment they were worshiping, it wasn't attached to the ground. So therefore, potentially it could become prohibited. And I guess they were catching the water in midair, and that's where they were drinking it, right? They had to drink it, right? Sof, nevertheless, avnei har shenil daldelu ninhu. So at the end of the day, they should have the same halacha as stones that were part of a mountain that became dislodged by a natural phenomenon. Let's say there's an earthquake and the stones peeled off. That
Or tsunami.
or stones don't usually come off of mountains by tsunamis, but water does, right? That's water, right? So this should have that same halacha. So therefore, we should come to the conclusion, Distayim, Rabbi Yochanan damar asuros, that Rabbi Yochanan would hold that those rocks that came off the mountain could be prohibited, right? That could be a problem. So no, not necessarily, because tzricha de tafchinhu biyadei. What happened here is they literally splashed the water up in the air. So it was similar to the circumstance where the rocks were, they were quarried out of the mountain for the sake of idolatry. That we said was prohibited. And so they splashed the water up in the air for the sake of idolatry. They worshipped it in the air. They caught it and they drank it. And that is where Rabbi Yochanan says that it wasn't idolatrous. Because the water was public, it didn't belong to anybody individual. And so therefore these people had no right to prohibit the water that belonged to somebody else.
Even though they worshipped, even if it was worshipped or not. Even if it was worshipped.
Exactly, even if it was worshipped. Next, Rechia bar Abba ikla legavla. Reb Chia bar Ava, he went to a place called Gavla, and Chaza benos Yisrael demi Abron me'ov de kochavim shemalu velo tavlu, and he saw that there were these Jewish girls, and they were getting married to some non-Jewish people, but they were in the middle of their conversion, right? They had their circumcisions, they hadn't gone to the mikveh yet, so they were not Jewish, but they were in the middle of their conversions. Okay. Now there is an argument in other places whether that is enough for conversion, but this opinion is going to say no. You have to have both. They're not completely converted. So that's what he saw. He saw that, and the ladies were pregnant with their husbands. So now what happens? Then Chaza Chamra de Mazgov de Kochavim v'Shas Yisrael. He saw that the non-Jewish people, that the idol worshippers there, were pouring wine for the Jews, and the Jews were drinking it. Chaza Turmusa de Shalki Luhu of de Kochavim v'Achli Yisrael. He saw that they had these Turmusa beans. I don't think it's related to tiramisu, but Turmusa is a bean that has to be very heavily cooked. Right? It's inedible unless you really cook it a lot. So they had these beans that were very heavy, and the non-Jews were cooking it, and the Jews were eating it. Now, what should be the problem with that? We talked about bishul akum, non-Jewish, right? Food that was made by a non-Jew should be prohibited, right? Velo amar lehu velo midi, but he kept his mouth closed. He didn't say anything to them. Also, lekame de Rabbi Yochanan. So he came before Rabbi Yochanan. Amar le. So he said to him, Tzei v'hichriz al b'neihem shein mamzerim. First of all, you got to announce that all the children that they're having, they're all mamzerim, right? Because they're non-Jewish, right? Val yenam mishum yayin nesech. Number two, the wine that comes from there is yayin nesech. The non-Jews are pouring it. V'al turmuson mishum bishulei ovdei kochavim. And as far as their turmuson that they're eating, that is all prohibited because it is bishul akum. It's made by non-Jews. Okay? Mishum she'enon b'nei Torah. And now, he doesn't say that. He says because they're not b'nei Torah. Okay, because they're not b'nei Torah. Now we're going to try to figure out what does that have to do with the fact they're not b'nei Torah. So let's investigate what the logic behind these rulings are. First of all, abneim shem mamzerim, the children are mamzerim. So Rabbi Yochanan l'tameh. Rabbi Yochanan is going according to his own reasoning, because Damar Rabbi Yochanan says li'olam eino ger ad sheyimol v'yitbol. A person is not converted until he gets a circumcision and he goes to the mikvah. One or the other, you're declaring your intention to complete your conversion is not sufficient to make you an actual Jew. You've got to complete the conversion. Therefore, since he hasn't gone to the mikvah yet, he is not Jewish. The Amar Rabbi Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Bar Chana said to Rabbi Yochanan, Ove kochavim ve'eved habal al bas Yisrael, that Rabbi Bar Chana further said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that if a non-Jew or a slave that marries a Jewish woman, havlad mamzer, the child is a mamzer. Now, what makes a mamzer, right? A mamzer, the rule of a mamzer is that a mamzer is not allowed to marry any other Jewish person other than another mamzer, right? Or say other than another mamzer, right? So now, why is that? So the rule of a mamzer is that when you have a prohibited marriage, right, two people who cannot marry, there's no such thing halachically, right? So let's say two relatives, right? They cannot get married to.
A brother cannot marry his sister.
Correct.
Example.
So the child is a mamzer. That's for sure, according to everybody. Rabbi Akiva expands that rule and says even if there's a prohibition against that marriage, even if it's not a death penalty type of era, it's also a mamzer. Rabbi Yochanan says even since a non-Jew, there's no such concept as marriage of kedushin by a non-Jew. Therefore, there's no marriage. Since marriage is impossible, the child is a mamzer. So therefore, that's the definition. So now this is very interesting. I don't think we hold this way, but the halachically speaking, if you have a non-Jewish man who has a wife who's Jewish, right? So then the child is a mamzer, right? So
is a mamzer still a Jew?
Mamzer's Jewish, but it becomes very difficult for him to find somebody to marry, right? So it's a difficult space to be in. Mamzer's completely Jewish.
Can a mamzer become not a mamzer?
No. He's stuck.
What's a mamzer? Always a mamzer.
Yeah, it's one of the worst tragedies, and it's not even his fault, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
You blame the parents for that.
blame the parents.
Yeah.
Now, no, my wife had a patient today. She was telling me
Wait, is it a doctor or
she's a nurse. She's a nurse, and the lady was say she was a Jewish lady, and she was so happy because her son got into medical school, and she's so happy. And she says, and not only that, but he's in medical school, but his wife. And he has a girlfriend who's Jewish and everything, and that's great. And my wife said, thank God, you have to thank God. She goes, yeah, because his father, my grandson got into medical school, and he says, I'm just so happy because his father didn't marry a Jewish girl. So he went from, now the boy's not Jewish, now he's dating a Jewish girl. Anyway, so my wife said, at least the children will be Jewish. Yeah, but according to Rabbi Yochanan, they'll be mamzerim. So, anyway, all right. It's like, hopefully the girl just thinks she's Jewish too.
Yeah.
Now, the gazer al yena mishum yanesach. Let's go into the next thing. They were pouring wine. We'll say it's yain nesach. Why? Mishum lech lech amrin nazir schor schor lekarma lo sikrov. He says that we're going to say that you should be stringent and go around. Now we're going to wonder, that's weird because it sounds like the non-Jews are actually pouring the wine. Shouldn't that really be yain nesach, right? Well, we say no. Yes.
The story was, it said mazgu. It sounded like maybe it's the same.
Oh, so that's what it is. So it's mazgu. So that's is that what it said? It says they're mazgu.
I think so.
Oh, then that answers that. So that's good. Okay.
So they're just diluting.
So they were just diluting, but we said fine because of the rule that we said. Go around. We tell the Nazir stay away. Good. Val Tormusan. The last question is why. What about their beans? Mishum bishuli ovde kochavim. That we're going to say it's because they are eating food that was cooked by non-Jews. But the kicker, which was complicated to understand, lefisha einam b'nei Torah, because they are not b'nei Torah. What are we talking about? Taima de'einam b'nei Torah. That means it's because the Jews are not b'nei Torah in that city. Ha b'nei Torah shari. If they were b'nei Torah, then it would be their food would be permissible. Why would that be? V'amar Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, Amar Rav, didn't Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak say in the name of Rav, Kol shenechal kemos shehuchai, ein bo mishum bishuli ovdei kochavim. The only way to get around a food being cooked by a non-Jew is if you could have eaten it raw, right? If you have cooked carrots, cooked by a non-Jew, that's fine, because carrots can be eaten raw. But a cooked potato, you can't eat from a non-Jew because that cannot be eaten raw. These beans cannot be eaten raw, therefore they should be 100% bishul akum problem, rabbinically prohibited, and shouldn't be allowed to eat them. Rabbi Yochanan ki hach lishna savrle. The answer is Rabbi Yochanan holds like the other opinion. Damar Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak says in Rav name of Rav, Kol she'enu ola l'shulchan shel malachim lalefes boas apas. Remember the secondary potential of what it is? That the food has to be significant enough to be able to put before a king. If the food is not something that a king would eat, there's no bishul akum issue, right? It's not a significant food. So therefore, this overcooked, refried beans, that's not a king's dish. Therefore, if a non-Jew makes it, it doesn't wind up prohibited. Ein bo bishul b'shili of the kachavim. So it's not really a bishul akum problem, according to Rabbi Yochanan, according to his own shita. Taima de'enon b'nei Torah. And therefore, he said, since they're not b'nei Torah, and they will make mistakes, and they will come to eat something that the non-Jews are making, which is actually prohibited, then we are going to prohibit this as well. Ha-b'nei Torah shari. But if they would have been b'nei Torah, and they were aware of what the non-Jews were cooking, things that were permissible for them to eat, and things that were not, we would have permitted it. Okay. Bo minei Rav Kahana. So if they ask Rav Kahana the fine question, Ovei kochavim mahu sheyolich anovim legas. Let's say you've got a non-Jew and he is pouring grapes into the wine press. Now he's got these grapes into some kind of container, trying to figure out how the Rishonim are trying to understand where the problem here is, whether it's that there's liquid on the grapes, and so therefore at the end of the day he's pouring this liquid from the grapes with the grapes into the container, and that's really where the concern is that the problem? Or is it anything similar to pouring? We should just keep the non-Jew away from all of our grapes in order to keep them away from the wine production.
I'll say keep the non-Jews away from the grapes because it's over the production.
Okay. So one of those two, the Rishonim, suggests both of those things. And Amar Lahu, he said it's Aser Mishum Lech Amr Nazir Skor Lekarma Lo Sikrav. We should just keep the non-Jews away, right? We stay away from Averos, and so therefore that is something that becomes prohibited. Again, only prohibited from drinking, not prohibited from getting any benefit out of. Eisvei Rabbi Yemar l'Rav Kana. So Rabbi Yemar asked Rav Kana the following question: Ovei kochavim shehevi anovim legas bisalin ubedudorin. Let's say the non-Jew brings the grapes and he brings it in baskets or in dudorin, which are I guess he's bringing in their containers, right? He's bringing in their containers.
Nun Testament base.
59b. Avo pisha yayin mizolif alehen mutter. Even though there could be liquid, it's not going to be wine really. It's going to be grape juice or whatever that's going to be on the grapes. That's permissible. Okay, so Amar Le, right? Because that means that shows you that there's really no problem with non-Jews bringing the grapes to the vat to be.
Even though the scriptures inside it's not marusha, that's another problem.
Sorry.
If there's scriptures inside which is not marusha, that could be a problem.
Oh, so that's it. So that's the issue. So he says it's mutter, right? He says it's mutter. So he says the wine is permissible. So he answers, he says Amar Le. So he says, so Rav Kana says to Rabbi Yemar, how do you understand that this is permissible? You said don't let the non-Jew do it. Here it says permissible. So he says, Hevi kamart ana lechatchila kamina. There's a difference between you're allowed to do it and if it was done, the wine's not forbidden, right? Better not to do it, but the wine's not forbidden. Okay, so that's what he was suggesting. Okay, so now, hahu esroga de nafal lechavisa de chamra. There was an esrog that fell into a barrel of wine. Okay, and idri oved kochavim v'shakle. A non-Jew was paying attention here, this idolater, and he reaches in, he grabs the esrog and saves the esrog, pulls it out of the wine. Now
you have to get rid of the whole batch.
Now the question is, what happens to the wine? Now,
get rid of the batch.
Going into the wine shouldn't be an issue because we know why he stuck his hand into the wine to get the esrog. The question is, well, now that he's got his hand in the wine, he's already saved the esrog, is he prohibiting the wine when he's removing his hand from it?
Yes, he is, because...
So Yehuda feels very strongly, guys. He's very strong.
Sure, it's not a problem because of his intention.
Right.
So there. Okay. So you're suggesting prohibited to drink, but you should be able to sell it. So Amar Lehu Ravashi. So Ravashi says, Naktua liyadeh. You're right. Problem is going to be when he takes his hand out. So you know what you should do? Naktua liyadeh ki hechi delo lishach shichbei. First thing you do, grab his hands while his hands are still in the wine and hold them so he can't move his hands around and create any sort of prohibition, right? Then that solves that problem.
But isn't it prohibition the moment he puts his hand in, whether he moves it or not?
No, he's got to move around, right? He's got to shift around he's got to cause the wine to move in order for there to be a prohibition, right? Ubertsua, but all the wine that he touches, right? So now what do you do next is ubertsua ad deshaifa. Then you drain the wine up until all his hands reach. So, and then the rest of the wine becomes permissible. And now probably it's because it's what we said. The wine that once he sticks his hands in, anything that he touches becomes prohibited for drinking, but not prohibited for any benefit.
Hang on.
Right.
But when you drain it, presumably that means you're draining it from the bottom. The wine. He's
got to drain it from the top. It's a good point. He's got to drain it from the top. Yeah, you got to drain it from the top. Still, it is interesting that we're not suggesting that the wine mixes all together. Still interesting, right? Right, because you would presume liquid kind of moves around in the container, and they do not seem to presume. And it sounds like the reason for that is that we're being extra strict in the first place, right? Remember that the non-Jew probably isn't doing anything wrong here. He's not making it consecrate or anything like that. And so therefore, really, the wine is probably permitted, but we're going to be strict and not drink it anyway. Therefore, we're going to only drain that which he officially touched. So we're going to go extra lenient on the subject.
Taking a page from your from Chicago, you just put a cover over the cast. An extra wouldn't have fallen in.
That's right, exactly.
Cover.
Just leave covers of things, exactly. Amar Rav Ashi says, "Hi Ove Kochavim, dinaschi lechamra di Yisrael bekavana." The Rav Ashi says, okay, so now there was a circumstance that there was a non-Jew, and he intentionally came and he consecrated the wine of a Jew for idolatry. All this time is everything is he touched by accident. Now let's get a real case, okay? Now the non-Jew, he really meant it. He goes, holy, holy wine, and it just shakes his hand in it. He does the whole business, okay? Bekavana, with intention and everything. Okay. So now, even though the wine now is prohibited, the wine has zero value to it. He can't sell it to any other non-Jew. Prohibited getting with it. Shari leila mishkal dameh me'ahu oved kochavim. You're still allowed to sue that non-Jew and get money from him. Right? He still caused you a loss. Right? My time. And what now? Doesn't that look like he's buying the wine from you? You're getting benefit from the wine? My time. What's the reason?
No, you charge him millions of dollars. If the working costs like contract, but you charge millions.
Sorry.
You know, when you sue someone, you could charge them for $100.
Yeah, no, you can sue him for the cost, the value. We don't have. I mean, we have pain and suffering. We don't make things up in Judaism. Right. Mikla Kahal Yereim. The answer is because it's as though he burned it up. Right? He destroyed the wine, so therefore he's financially responsible.
You also make a lot of money from that.
Now, not a lot, but the value of the wine. Yeah. Now, that tells us something that's going to inform us in the next few cases, which is that a non-Jew does not want to get caught with his hand in the cookie jar or in the wine jar, right? He does not want to get caught because if he gets caught, he's got to pay for it. That's right. That's other.
Pay for it.
Correct. So he's not going to want to get caught. So that is going to inform us on circumstances where we're not sure of the non-Jew's intention, whether we would presume that he would do it or he wouldn't do it. We have to understand that a non-Jew does not want to get caught.
So similar to like Kahal Yereim, that was the famous saying.
Yeah.
They wouldn't want to be caught with illegal products and not posting.
So there, yes, right? So non-Jews do not want to be caught because they're going to have to pay. Amar Rav Ashi says, Mina Amina law. Where do I know this from? The Tanya we learn in Brisa. If you have a non-Jew who consecrates the wine of a Jew, not in front of an idol, Asr, it's prohibited. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, Matirin, and Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava and Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, they say it's permissible, Mishum Shnei Dvarim, because of two things. Number one, they hold that it's not officially consecrated to an idol unless there's an idol there. Right, just randomly walk up to a barrel of wine. That's not going to be a real Yayin Nesach case.
If you're a crucifix, a cross, no, that could.
If you brought your idol with you, then yeah, then you can bring it.
If you got your cross necklace or something.
Okay, so then now you're bringing your idol with you, right? But we're saying if there's no idol around. Ve'echad, and another one is she'omer lo kol heimenach shetiyasar yeni le'onsi. Right, you're not allowed to just force my wine into your possession, right? So therefore that's Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira's point, right? That you can't just force my wine into your possession. You can't just take it away from me. Okay, so that means that that because Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, if I'm trying to understand exactly how this proves our point, and it was a little bit complicated, but Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira and Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava are essentially saying we cannot appreciate the idea that somebody is causing somebody a loss that they are not to be compensated for. To which that means that the Tanakama holds that the loss is something you're compensated for. And therefore that proves our point that the wine, if the non-Jew gets caught consecrating it, he is responsible for payment for whatever he damages. Hahi chavisa de chamra. There was a barrel of wine. De ishtakil lebarza. The spigot broke. Okay, so now if you've got a barrel, right? You've got your barrel like so, right? Okay, right, and then you've got there's a name for those things that are around them, but I don't know the name of it. All I know is this is in the cartoons. They always go over Niagara Falls in this thing, right?
Yeah.
Here's our barrel, right? That's exactly, they're always over, right? And they've got a spigot hole which goes right down there, and they would have a little, a pipe that would come out in order to be able to pour from. So the spigot broke, okay, and now the wine is inside this tube, and the non-Jew, he's a good guy, so he sticks his hand over the hole to prevent all the wine from coming out, right? The problem is he touches the wine. Right. So now what happens? So also Ovei Kochavim, Idri, he stuck his hand, so the Ovei Kochavim came, and Anach Yadei Ilaveh, he put his hand over the hole where the spigot was. Amar Rav Papa, so Rav Papa says, Kol dilahadi barza chamra asir. Any wine that is in that spigot tube, that is prohibited. Not the entire wine of everything that's connected, because he considers the wine in the spigot tube to be separate and distinct from the rest of the wine that is in the barrel, because it's already, I guess, located horizontally outside of the barrel, or however it works. These are a little bit confusing to me, but I'm going to read it, and you guys will be able to explain it how you feel.
Let's go on the notes in 60, 82. You have a picture of something.
Where?
60, 82.
All right, we'll get there. We'll get there. Yeah.
We're not on 68.2. Don't worry, you're ahead.
A little ahead. Yeah.
Ve'idach shari. The other side, and the rest is permissible. The rest of the wine is permissible. Ve'ikadamri, there are those who say, no, this is what Rav Papa said. Amar Rav Papa says, ad habarza chamra asir. That all the wine up until down here, everything from here up, he's holding that wine in the barrel. Therefore, all the wine from the spigot hole up is all prohibited. But anything that's from the spigot hole downward, that is permissible. Right? Ve'idach shari, the rest is permissible. Amar of Yemar, so Rav Yemar says, Kitanai, it is an argument between Tanoim, it was an argument that happened, right? This statement that Rav Papa makes is not according to everybody. It was an argument that was from previous sages, and it goes like this. Chavis shenokva bein mipiha, bein mishuleha, bein mitzideha. If you have a barrel, and it gets a hole on it, whether on the top, the bottom, or the side, the naga bo, and now a person sticks his finger in the hole in order to prevent it from leaking, and he is tameh.
Put a cork in it.
Right, well, he doesn't have a cork, so he puts the finger in it. The naga bo, he touches the wine, and he's naga bo tvul yom. This guy is tameh. Now he's tameh, he's not fully tameh. We are going to know the cases that he was tameh. He went to the mikveh today, but he's nevertheless going to remain a tvul yom till the evening. A tvul yom, we're just being taught as a side issue, also makes truma tameh. He cannot touch truma, right? That we had in the beginning of Masechus Brachos, from the time that the Kohanim going to eat their truma because they went to the mikvah, they had to wait for their tahor at nightfall. So this guy is not tahor. He's still tameh. So he's tameh. The wine becomes tameh because he stuck his finger into the wine and he touched it. Rabbi Yehuda says, Mi pia umishuleha tameh. If you stick your finger in the hole at the top or the bottom, then you're right, because you touch on the top, then all the wine in the whole barrel, vertical up and down, is all connected. From the bottom, then you're touching all the wine because you're holding the whole thing up. Mitzideha, but if you stick your finger in the side, tahora, then it's still tahor, because the wine is, like in this circumstance where we have here, the wine going to the side is not, I guess, connected to the rest of the wine, right? Then mikan, anything from one direction and the other is still permissible, above and below. So therefore, that's where we see that that opinion holds like Rav Papa. Amar Rav Papa says, Ovei Kochavim Adona v'Yisrael Akuva. You've got a non-Jew, and he's got the big container. He's got the barrel, and the Jewish fellow has the jug, right? He's buying wine, and the non-Jew is the store owner, and he's billing out the wine from the large container, and the non-Jew has the small container. Chamra Osir. That makes the wine prohibited, yayin nesach. My timer, what's the reason? Ki asi mikoach ove kochavim. By pouring the wine, remember all this time we always know that yayin nesach is when the non-Jew pours the wine. Well, here it is. The reason is because the non-Jew is causing through his force the wine to move. So therefore, if he's causing the wine to move by pouring the wine, so then that creates the prohibition. So therefore, since he's the one pouring from the big container into the little container, the wine is yain nesach.
So was the wine initially?
The wine is in the
not
large
yain
container.
until he starts
pouring it. That's correct.
Oh, okay.
Right? Yisrael adon avove kochavim akuva, but if it's the other way around, let's say the Jew starts to pour the wine from the large container and the non-Jew just holds the small container, chamra shari, the wine is okay. Why? Because the non-Jew is just catching the wine. He's got no movement, he's not doing anything to it.
Well, when it gets heavier, you start moving it.
Oh, okay, so v'imitzad, they do the usher. If he starts to shake that utensil, then you got a problem. You're right? If he starts to shake it around, then that's where that could be a problem.
Because usually it's such a...
Amar of Papa. Rav Papa says, Hai ove kochavim didori zika v'ka'azil Yisrael achorei. Okay, let's say there's a idolater, and he's got a wineskin. Right, they would put their leather cask. Right, he's got a leather cask flask. Thank you. Now, and he's going, and there's a Jew right behind him. So that means he doesn't want to get caught. So he can't tampering. His tampering has to be not easy to detect. Right, Malya. If the wineskin is completely full, shari, then it's fine. Why? Because you can't delo mikarkish. Because you can't shake. If you shake, the wine doesn't move because there's no airspace in there. So therefore, he's not. And opening it, he's not going to do because the Jew is right behind him. So therefore, that's fine. Chasira. Now, if the bottle is half full, so then aser. Then it's prohibited. Why? Dilma mekarkish kuva because dilma mekarkish because he'll shake it while he's walking and it's inconspicuous. And that shaking it around is his strength, and that's going to invalidate the wine, even without him touching it, right? Kuva malya osir. Okay, now, if he's got an uncovered container, if it's full, now it's prohibited. Why? Because for him to just quickly stick a finger in it and swish it around is easy, right, without being noticed. Dilma naga, because he'll touch the wine. Chasira, if there's missing, so now shari, now it's permissible because he can't reach the wine easily. Dilo naga, he's not going to touch it. Rav Ashi says zika, when it comes to the container, bein malya, bein chasera, shari, whether it's open or closed is permissible. My tayrma, what's the reason? Ein derech nisuch bekach. Just shaking up a utensil, closed utensil, that's not how non-Jews consecrate the wine. That's not how they there's no significance to that. So that's not a problem. Okay. Next is me'atzra Zara. A wine press. Okay, so if the non-Jew squeezes in a wine press, what they would do is, you've got that we discussed, we had this vat, right? And they would put boards on top of the vat, right? And then, cuts like this.
The illustration.
Oh, you've got a nice illustration. Right? So you've got this container, it goes like this, okay? So you've got all the grapes in here, and you put these boards, right? The boards go this way on the top, okay? Then he pushes down on the boards in order to squish everything. Well, if he pushes down on the boards, so then, right? They would have a screw, right? They would put a screw kind of thing here, right? And it would push the boards in this direction. And when he would tighten the screw, it would push the boards further and further down. Okay, so now, Rav Papa Shari. So Rav Papa says that wine is fine, right? Because it's not the non-Jew's force that's moving this liquid around. It's just he's causing the screw, which causes the wine. So that's fine.
By pumping it.
Rav Ashi v'item by screwing it, right? Rav Ashi v'item Rav Shimi barashi aser aser. He says it's prohibited. Now, bekocho, if the non-Jew actually presses on the beams directly, so then kuli alma lo pligi de osir. Then everyone agrees that's prohibited, right? Then the non-Jew is literally pushing on the beams and moving the wine around. That's going to be problematic. Ki pligi bekoach kocho. The argument is only if the non-Jew is turning the screw which pushes the board down, which moves the wine. That's where the argument. Ikadamri, there are those who say no, bekoach kocho kulayam lo pligi de shari. That if the non-Jew is only causing this turning the screw, which is causing the beam to push down, which is causing the wine to move. Everyone agrees that's fine. Ki pligi bekocho. The argument is if he's not touching the wine and he's pushing down. So it was a little bit questionable where the argument was. Hava uvda bekoach kocho. There was a situation that happened where the non-Jew turned the screw and pushed the wine down that way. Also, Rabbi Yaakov minar bekod, and Rabbi Yaakov said it prohibited. So you see that this is in fact the argument, right? And there is an opinion that says that even though he's not actually touching the liquid, not only is he not touching the liquid, he's not even touching the thing that's touching the liquid. Tosfos comes up with a very interesting chiddush, and that he says that once we say not only does the non-Jew not have to touch the wine directly, not only is it that prohibited if the non-Jew turns the screw, but if you have a third or a fourth or a fifth cause, let's say you've got that game Mousetrap, right, and he knocks over the bucket and then the marble rolls and that, it doesn't matter. As long as the non-Jew is the initial cause of whatever moves the wine, that makes it prohibited.
Did you say yesterday they could use machinery to do
So this is going to indicate that machinery is going to be problematic, right?
You've experienced that before.
That's exactly right. That's where I had my wine
Right.
filled so this is where you had, if you know enough to be worried. This is like, I don't know whether what I saw was not good, but I do know that it had me worried. That it had me worried. Okay. Hahi chavisa, there was a barrel de'afke'ah le'urka. The barrel cracked straight down the side this way. Okay? And draw a crack right down the side of the barrel. This is high tech. This is like Ellie Stefanski stuff here now. Okay? It's okay, Ellie Stefanski
Here's
stuff.
the illustrator.
There we go. Okay? So barrel cracks right down the side. And we've got our attentive, non-Jewish fellow, beautiful guy. What does he do? Hahu ove kochavim chabka. He came and he hugged the barrel, and he held it closed, right? Saving the wine, okay? Sharye Ra from Bar Papa. Ra from Bar Papa says, that's fine, right? There's no issue there. And Ve'itema Rav Huna, brother of Yeshua, Lizvune La'ovde Kochavim, but only to sell it to other non-Jews. Why? Because ultimately, even though he's not touching the wine, it's similar to what we said, where the non-Jews pushing on the sides of the container is holding the wine in. If the non-Jew would just open it, the wine would spill all over the place. So he's pushing. It's similar to the pushing down of the wood onto the container and squishing it. Therefore, if the non-Jew comes and he wrestles it and he holds it around, that he's holding it in. Therefore, okay, it's not going to be prohibited in Hana because it's not really Yayin Nesach, but it is going to be prohibited for drinking. V'hani mili depaka le'urka. Now, that's only if it breaks along it goes up and down, right? A vertical crack. Aval lepusye afil b'shtiya shari. However, if it cracks this way, right? And what does he do? He sits on top of it to hold the barrel together. Everyone agrees that's fine. That's fine, even for drinking. My time, what's the reason? Maisa levena ka'avid, the non-Jew is just being a brick, right? He's just adding extra weight to it. There's no, his effort is not, right? I'm not exactly sure I can put my finger on exactly where the difference and the distinction is. You have to be thinking about it. But the barrel is still holding the wine in. It's just that he is providing weight to the barrel, not weight on the wine, right? In the first case, he's actually holding the wine in.
Let's say he did, what's it called? Let's say he did, like, it depends how big the crack is. Like, if it's a crack, like, if you, like, as long as, like, no one moves it, like, no one shifts it.
No, this is big enough that it sounds like if he didn't sit on it, it would all leak out. Yeah. So I'm just saying, yep. Hahu ove kochavim dishtakach dehava kai b'matzarta. Right? There was a non-Jewish fellow that they found him, and he was in somebody's wine press. So Mavashi, right? Now the wine press is sort of empty, but at the bottom of this container, if there's some liquid in the bottom of it, then there's enough there that theoretically the non-Jew could consecrate that. So now we have to worry. How do you know if there's enough liquid? We have some concept of tofeach lehat piach. You have something that's moist enough that if you touch it, then you touch something else, you will transfer liquid, right? If I wash my hands and I don't dry them, and then I come over to somebody and play a joke on them and wipe my hands on their shirt or their face, right? They'll feel
you'll get beating.
They'll feel the water, right? But
and you get beating if it happens.
But on the other hand, often I have this nice, this non-absorbent paper towel that I get in the washroom at school. So I wash my hands, I dry them, and my hand still feels wet. but nevertheless, it's not wet enough that if I touch something else, that it's going to make it wet. Those are two different. If this is moist enough that if it touches something else, it will cause that item to become moist, boy hadacha, then it needs what's called hadacha. Hadacha is going to be a thorough cleansing, and that's going to be a process where not only do I wash the remnants out, but then I have to take ash in order to be able to completely wipe it down, rinse that out, and then cover another layer of ash. I've got to really rinse this out. Oh boy, nigov, that's nigov. Nigov is the drying, which is through the ash. The ilo, but if it's not that wet, so then bahadacha bi'amasagi, then just rinsing it out is going to be fine. Okay? Says the next Mishnah. We'll stop at the end of the Mishnah, I believe. Ove kochavim shenimtza imo b'tzad habor shel yayin. Okay? This non-Jew is standing, he finds him, and he's standing next to the cistern of wine. You don't know what he's doing there and what he's... So, im yeshlo milva alav, if he has a loan, right, that he loaned money to this Jewish fellow. And so here's the issue, right? He doesn't want to get caught with his hands in the wine. So the question is, how comfortable, this non-Jew knows the Jew can walk in at any time. How likely is it that he's going to stick his hands into the wine? The answer is, he's going to do it if he has a plausible, deniable story, right? Why do you have your hands in the wine? The answer is because I loaned this guy money, and this is my wine because this was the mashkon, this was the collateral. So I'm here to collect my collateral. That's why my hand's in the wine, because I'm taking the wine. If that is, he has the excuse, then usr, the wine is prohibited. Because even if the Jew walked in and he got caught, the non-Jew would have a perfectly legitimate reason why his hands would be in his wine. Ain lo milva alav, but if he has no loan, so then mutter, then it's going to be permissible, right? Because why would he put it? Then he walks in, what are your hands doing in? You're ruining my wine? Now you got to pay for it. Nafal labor. Now the non-Jew falls in. He falls into the wine cistern. Ve'Allah. And he comes out. Madado bekana, vehitiz es hatzira bekana. Or let's say the non-Jew was measuring how much was there using the measuring stick. Or he was trying to flick a wasp away from the wine, right? Bekana with a stick, right? O shahaya matpiach al pi chavis mirutechas. Or he was touching with his hands to keep the foam down in the barrel. The barrel was, this was being manufactured because it was bursting of foam. He's pushing the foam down. This is clearly, these are things that he's doing that have nothing to do with an intention to cause an idolatry, right? So, Bekol elu hayamaiseh v'amru yimocher. In all of those circumstances, so then you are not allowed to drink the wine. You have to sell it. Rabbi Shimon matir. Rabbi Shimon says, we don't have that extra stringency. You're fine, you can drink that. Noto es a chavis v'zarka bechamaso. If this non-Jew got mad and he takes the barrel and he throws it bechamaso labor in his anger into the cistern, zehaya maisa. This really happened. The story happened. V'echshiro, and they said the wine is fine. Okay, we've got a couple minutes. Amar Shmuel. Shmuel says v'hu sheyesh lo milval oso yayin. Right? The loan has to be such that the wine is actually the collateral for the loan. He has to, the collateral is his watch. Why is his hands in his wine? Right? The collateral has to be the wine. Amar Ravashi, Masnis and Nami Daika, you can even see that from the Mishnah itself. It's not because the Mishnah says, HaMatayr Yeno Shel Ove Kochavim, if somebody is purifying the wine of a non-Jew, Venos no Birushuso, right? So what happens is, this non-Jew he wants to sell kosher wine. So he has to hire Jewish staff to make the wine. So this Jewish guy is making the wine in his wine press. The non-Jew can't touch it while he's making the wine, but the Jew is there. V'nos no berushuso, and now the wine is in his, right, he's in the non-Jewish person's property. The hala kosev lo, and the other one says, hiskabalti mimcha maos mutter. He says, look, I've already received payment, and therefore, as a result, the non-Jew has no right to this wine, so then the non-Jew would never be in that area. He's got no excuse to be in that area touching this wine. Aval im yirtza Yisrael lohotzio ve'ein manicho ad sheyitin lo ma'osav. However, if the Jew wanted to be able to take this wine out, right, and this guy would not be able to, he would not give him, he would say, you can't, not until you pay me. So then Zehaya Maisa Beishan, this happened in Beit Shan, the Asru, and they said the wine is prohibited. Why? Time of Dein Manicho. The reason is because he's not allowed, right? He wouldn't that the Jew would be able to stop him from being able to take the wine, because the non-Jew has the rights to this wine. Ha-manicho shari, if the wine was able to be taken out, so then it would be permissible. Shmamina, milva also yayin, ba'inan shmamina. You need to be able to have the loan on this wine, which gives the non-Jew rights to this wine. He could take liberties with the wine and get away with it. Okay, good place to stop.